So, back in 1874, there's this expedition marching into the Black Hills of what was then the Dakota Territory. Now, on the surface, it was just a military survey. But underneath all that, it was one of the most successful and honestly, one of the most consequential marketing campaigns in American history. And it all kicked off with a very carefully crafted lie. Yeah, right from the get-go, as historian Richard Slotkin points out, the real mission was kind of hiding in plain sight. This was never just about mapping out some territory. It was about spinning a narrative, right? Building a justification for everything that was about to happen. So that's the big question here, isn't it? How does a military expedition turn into one of history's most successful PR campaigns? It's a wild story of media manipulation, sheer economic desperation, and of course, the carefully built image of a guy who knew how to grab a headline just as well as he could lead a cavalry charge. Okay, so where do we even begin? To really get why this expedition happened in the first place, we've got to rewind a bit, back to a time when the whole country was in a pretty desperate spot. See, the Panic of 1873 had absolutely hammered the country. I mean, think, massive unemployment, banks just failing left and right. The nation was really on its knees. President Grant's government was desperate. They needed a win, any win. They needed a story of hope, something to kickstart the economy. And the answer, they figured, was buried somewhere in the Black Hills. They just needed the right story to dig it out. Now, to pull something like this off, you couldn't just send any old soldier. No, you needed a frontman, a celebrity. You needed George Armstrong Custer. You have to understand, Custer wasn't just a soldier. He was basically a media mastermind for his time. This guy was constantly curating his own image, writing for magazines, even filing his own glowing press reports under a pen name. And for this mission, he brought his entire PR toolkit. He handpicked reporters to make sure the coverage was friendly. He brought along a scientific core to make it all look legit. And of course, he brought his own undeniable star power. And make no mistake, this was no quiet little survey. This thing was a spectacle. 1,000 men, a wagon train that stretched for miles. It was like a city on the move, rolling right through forbidden territory. But the real giveaway, the big clue to the mission's true purpose, was the fact that he brought along two professional miners. Their job wasn't just to look for gold, it was to find the story that the nation was so desperate to hear. Okay, so the stage is set. The audience is ready and waiting. All Custer needed now was the perfect headline. And boy, did he find it. This phrase right here, "We found gold among the roots of the grass." I mean, this is just pure marketing genius. Custer actually sent a scout on this incredibly dangerous 150-mile ride just to get this message to a telegraph wire. He knew this wasn't just news. This was perfectly crafted advertising copy, and it absolutely lit a fire across the nation. But here's the really brilliant part, why this specific phrase was so powerful. Gold from the roots of the grass meant something very specific. Placer gold. And to every single unemployed worker back east, that was a signal. It meant you didn't need some huge corporate mining company. All you needed was a shovel, a pan, and the guts to go west. It was this democratic promise of wealth for the common man. But okay, let's pull back the curtain and look at the reality behind those screaming headlines. The expedition? They found at best tiny little flakes of gold. The real mother lode, the stuff that would later be found around places like Deadwood, was in a part of the hills the expedition never even got close to. The hype was completely, totally disconnected from what they actually found. And this number, this just says it all, doesn't it? Think about it. When gold was discovered in California, soldiers were deserting in droves to go get rich. After Custer's so-called discovery, zero. Not one single man, not even the professional miners they brought along for the trip, thought the find was worth staying for. They all just packed up and went right back to Fort Lincoln with the army. But look, a viral headline wasn't going to be enough. To really, truly sell this dream, you had to make people see it. You had to make it look real. And this is where the visual propaganda campaign really kicks into high gear. So the expedition's photographer, a guy named William Illingworth, was using what was basically cutting-edge tech for the time, the stereograph. And for people back east, this was mind-blowing. It let them sit in their own parlors and see the Black Hills in immersive 3D. It made this distant, almost mythical land feel astonishingly real, and more importantly, accessible. This was the fuel for what everyone started calling Black Hills fever. And Illingworth's photos weren't just simple snapshots either. They were carefully composed pieces of propaganda. I mean, take this iconic image of the wagon train snaking its way through Castle Creek Valley. That's not just a picture of wagons, it's a powerful visual argument. It screams, this is progress, this is manifest destiny, this is an unstoppable force taming an empty, wild land. And check out how they staged this moment right here. Custer was obsessed with his image as the ultimate Western hero, and killing a grizzly bear was like the top prize. The reality, it was messy, it was a group effort against an old, possibly wounded bear. But the photograph? Oh, the photograph tells a different story. In the final version, everyone else is positioned to make sure of one thing. Custer is the hero. He's the focal point, the conqueror. It is pure, calculated image making. So, there's no question, the PR campaign was a massive, resounding success. But that success, it came at a tremendous and ultimately a tragic cost. This timeline really lays it all out, connecting all the dots for us. First, you have the economic crisis creating the need. Then, Custer's media blitz creates the rush. And that rush of miners, which was in direct violation of the 1868 Fort Laramie Treaty, led directly to war just 2 years later. And right here, this is the political genius and the tragedy of the whole campaign. The government didn't have to openly break the treaty themselves. Instead, they manufactured a crisis, this massive gold rush, and then they could just throw their hands up and claim they were powerless to stop the will of the people. They basically created the fire and then acted surprised when it burned out of control. And what's maybe most haunting is that Custer himself seemed to know exactly what he was setting in motion. In his own words, he admitted they were pushing the Lakota toward a terrible revenge. It's just this chilling moment of self-awareness from the very person orchestrating the whole provocation. And all of this leaves us with one last big thought. The story of this 1874 expedition, it really suggests that the conquest of the West wasn't just about soldiers and settlers. It was also about newspapermen, photographers, and master salesmen. And it makes you wonder, right? How much of our history wasn't just lived, but was actively marketed to us?